Welcome back to another episode of ISOBALL. And hey, I heard the rumors. I heard I was a one-episode merchant. They told me it couldn't be done. They told me that episode 2 was never coming. I appreciate y'all being patient, but it's here. With that being said, let's get straight into it, man. We don't have to do all the formalities. We don't have to get all punchy. With how things have been going recently, NBA season, of course, getting in full swing. If you guys don't know, I like to be in my college basketball bag. Of course, college basketball kicking out. My Tennessee Volunteers winning their first game of the season. The boy Cooper Flagg from Maine showing out against UMaine Orono. We lost a bit of coin on that game. Definitely had the Black Bears spread, but, we move on to the next. In general in life, man, it's been an interesting couple weeks since ISOBALL 1 came out. Of course, presidentially, we have a new president coming in. Hope everybody is, okay with how that went. Obviously, political stuff can get very, very tied up in the details, so hope everybody is feeling all right with that, no matter which aisle you tend to lean on. But moving on from that, man, we just got some hoops to talk about. It's the best time of the year for sports. Of course, the NFL season winding down into their own playoffs. The college basketball season starting. The NBA, things are starting to shape out a little bit more. With that being said, though, let's talk about something that is not shaped up at all. Something that at this point in the season is very hard to put your finger on. I'm talking about the MVP ladder. Now, the MVP ladder this early in the season, as I record this, it's Wednesday. Most teams have played 7 or 8 games. Things are bound to change, but that's the fun of it. I love checking in on this stuff. And using the basketballreference.com MVP ladder, there's just some funny names in this ladder that we got to touch on. So let's cruise through 10 through 5, but then in that top 5, there are some names. So at 10, they have Derek White. I mean, talk about defensive impact. The Celtics, they start the season 7-1, and we know what Derek White brings to the court. Of course, in a week's time, in a month's time, a guy like Derek White wouldn't be considered. But when you look around to be an MVP in general, hey, you got to be on a team that succeeds. Of course, Boston starting the season 7-1 through 8 games, looking like arguably the best team on paper. We'll touch on that in a minute. But D. White, I mean, that's a funny name to have up here at this point. And then Jalen Williams of the Thunder. Of course, Thunder undefeated as I record this, 7-0. J-Dub showing out as being that perfect complementary piece. Now, I've seen the TikTok edits. I've seen the comparisons to these KD, Westbrook, and Harden Thunder teams. And what the Thunder are doing right now, it is hard not to see the similarities. Now, KD was best player on that team during that time. His comp would be J-Dub. J-Dub is no Kevin Durant, but the way they play the game, having a guard that is so ball dominant, having a forward that can be as versatile as J-Dub is, and obviously the key difference being, hey, there's no Harden, but Chet miles and miles above of what a guy like Ibaka was doing already in his young career. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. On to the next, Domantas Sabonis. Look, that game winner the other night, he's showing up, and hey, I talked about this in episode 1. Clutch Player of the Year, I think, is a very guard-dominant award. But if there's going to be a big man that gets these looks down the stretch, like it seems like Sabonis is going to do in Sacramento, that's a beautiful thing. And I'll put my hands in the air. I've been a perpetuate of this as well. I think we fall into the trap where you look at that Sacramento team. They bring in DeRozan. Of course, they have a lot of things that are moving around. You look at De'Aaron Fox as being that A1 on the team. And if I can be honest with you guys, I don't think that's true anymore. I think Sabonis is clearly their dog over there. He's the guy that they're going to go to down the stretch. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, a guy that was in Clutch Player of the Year voting, I believe won the award 2 years ago, right? This is a guy that can handle himself in the big moments, and they still look to Sabonis to finish things off over there. That guy is uber talented. I think the defense has come a long way. He went from a guy that was kind of one of these European bigs with this versatile offensive game, but, hey, you can't even play him on defense, to being so much more than that. I love what we've seen from Sabonis. Next up, Anthony Davis. I think, a tough couple of back-to-back games recently moves him down because he, at one point this year, leading the league in scoring, having block numbers up there with the best of them. AD has started this year with an incredible pace, and hey, in Los Angeles. You're in potentially the last or second to last year of Braun over there. You have a new head coach. It's time for other guys to step up. I love the bench production from a Dalton Connect. I still have faith in Jalen Hood-Schifino. Obviously, he's never going to be a factor over there again. Not really involved in their long-term goals, but they have young guys off that bench. But what you really need is your superstar to step up on those spots. Now, Braun has done it this year, but it really is AD's turn. I think we're starting to see that in LA. Of course, they start the season 4-0. Kind of coming back down to earth. We can break down the Lakers a little bit more in depth in a little bit, but at 6, Darius Garland, I mean, what can you say? This is a guy who, rookie year, worst player in the league by all metrics. Second year, all-star, really stepping up in those spots. And then last year, just didn't work with JB Bickerstaff. In my opinion, I don't think he was ever going to work with JB. And I didn't say this at the time, but looking back, 2020 vision and hindsight, you can see that it was never going to work. JB, a more defensive-oriented coach in general, he needs his point guard to be someone that sets up the offense and gets out of the way. Now, Darius Garland, a decent playmaker. We've seen his decision-making be good at times, although inconsistent. He's not going to be that guy. Darius Garland works better, and as one of these smaller, so maybe a slimmer frame sort of point guard that, hey, he'll make a nice pass here and there, but he's really working at getting around on ball screens. He wants to push the pace. He wants to put the ball on the floor. That's what Kenny Atkinson is letting him do. Now, do I think he's truly better than a guy like Donovan Mitchell or his teammate Jared Allen? No, I don't really even think he's better than Mobley necessarily, but when he's doing what he does best, he is one of these point guards out east that can really compete for being one of the best ones. Hey, the East, the point guards in the East especially, you see Brunson, you see Maxey, and after that, there is a wide discussion of who is in that range. I mean, LaMelo has started the year incredible. He's not going to be found on this list because of how bad the Hornets are. LaMelo is legit in the East. Cade Cunningham, one of these younger guys, is legit in the East. And then we can have conversations about Drew Holiday. We can have conversations about these guys that probably just are a little bit past that point. Why would Darius Garland not be in that conversation? I think he feels that way as well. This Cleveland team looking really, really good. Darius Garland being a major factor in that with the new Kenny Atkinson offense. And then this top 5, of course, we are so early, so I'm really just listing players that have started the year strong and honestly are on good teams. Chet Holmgren at 5. Brought him up a little bit earlier in the J-Dub talks. He is really developing into one of those elite centers. I mean, we see in the modern day with a Victor Wembanyama, with even an Alperen Şengün, the way that the center scape is shifting around is very interesting, and it falls in favor of a guy like Chet Holmgren, a guy who is comfortable shooting the 3. I appreciate that he doesn't feel like he needs to stretch the floor. He is confident playing inside. When he matches up with the best of the best, when he takes on a Jokic, when they match up against Denver, he is ready for the defensive challenge, and you have to give him credit. Of course, injuries sideline him early in his career. It's not what you want to see. But we know that when he is healthy and when he is on the court, he plays with a tough brand of ball. I mean, usually for these slimmer guys, usually for the guys that have an injury history to a certain extent, they don't go out and they don't play with the level of toughness that Chet Holmgren does. So I know the old head, some of my older peers might think that you see a guy like him on the court, you don't like what you're going to get. You don't get the effort that it requires to be an NBA level big. I don't think that's the case at all. I think Chet goes out and he plays with tenacity. He plays with intensity, and he's shown that throughout his career. I really love what Chet's doing this year, and of course, much bigger things to come. Does he finish this year as a top 5 MVP contender? No. Does he deserve that sort of title right now based on what we've seen from the Thunder? Absolutely. 4, Jared Allen. This is a really funny one. I brought up Jared earlier, but on this Cavs team right now, you look at who's playing the best, and I think Jared Allen would be that guy. And talked about it in interviews last year, and he brought it up again this year, something that sticks with my mind. You see him after they get a defensive 3-second violation, 5-second violation, clapping his hands, getting all excited, and you wonder, why is this guy excited that he just committed, a foul, a penalty for his team? That's because of how much he cares about the defensive side of ball. He is fine picking up these meaningless fouls, giving the other team a free throw, because it shows the willingness to stay in the paint. You're not getting a shot up on Cleveland. I don't know what to tell you right now. This is a team that had Coach Bickerstaff, a team that has Allen and Mobley in their front court, probably one of the best defensive front court pairings you could imagine in the NBA. They're getting better on defense. You are not getting a shot up in the paint against Jared Allen. He is incredible. He is willing to put his full effort on that side of the ball. And then on offense, while he's a bit more limited, I like what he does. He has that little hook. He has a little floater in his bag. And of course, he's tall. He can be a rim runner. He's good at getting his position set up. He likes to set a pick here and there. I really like what Jared Allen's doing. Again, like I'm going to keep saying, is he really an MVP candidate? No. But he's playing up to that standard. And then the top three, I'm going to cruise through these guys. They have Tatum at 3, Jokic at 2, Shea at 1. I mean, arguably 3 of the best teams in the NBA. I think you could put OKC and Boston right up there for Shea and Tatum. Those are the best players. And then Jokic, he's going to pad the stats like crazy. I brought this up on the first episode when I was talking about my MVP predictions. I picked Shea because I think he's going to be the best player on the most competitive team out west. But when you look at the stats, do I think the Nuggets are going to compete at the level that they have in years past? I don't know. Even Michael Porter Jr. mentioning that, hey, we might have to blow this thing up if we don't commit to the core we have right now. I don't necessarily think Denver is going to compete at the level that they have, but if you don't think Jokic's stats are going to improve, I don't know what to tell you. These possessions where he might be making that extra pass out to a guy like KCP, that all changes. He is a guy like Chris Brown running down the rim, a guy that's a little less efficient as a shooter, a lot more efficient as a guy that cuts to the rim. It's just going to get his rebounds up. It's just going to get his points up, just going to get the assists up. And if Denver can somehow still compete as one of the 3 best teams in this stacked Western Conference, I have no doubt that Jokic will be in this conversation all year. So that's all I got for the MVP ladder, man. Of course, I wanted to dig into that a little bit. It's fun to see where we're at. A couple other guys that have been on this list that, obviously stand out. A Buddy Hield of Golden State. I'll break down Golden State on this episode for sure because that team, really interesting. Even in Steph's absence, their shooting has been A1. Their team chemistry even has been A1. Buddy Hield, a big proponent of that. But now looking over to the standings in general, there's definitely a lot to talk about. Haven't made up my mind if I want to start at the bottom or start at the top. We can cruise through the top, I think. Let's start in the East. Cavs, mentioned it plenty of times. Don't have to say it again. 8-0 at this point in recording. Starting the season so well. I love the changes Kenny Atkinson has made. I love the rotations that he's throwing out on the court. There's not a time where they have a rotation on the court that I'm not confident can shoot the ball. And even with a little bit of crowding with Mobley and Allen, 2 guys that don't shoot the 3 at a super efficient clip, they have such incredible interior defense that they always have a matchup advantage on the court. It feels like Boston picking up a tough loss to Indiana. Outside of that, they've been nearly perfect. We know the chemistry that they're going to have together, and one thing that's been really encouraging from Boston is Al Horford having to start a lot of these games, an older guy. You don't want the wheels to fall off early in the season. Of course, this is because Porzingis is not healthy at the current moment, but it's the backup centers for Boston. These guys that honestly, in their entire careers have been nowhere near trustworthy. Luke Cornett, Neemias Queta. You don't expect either of those guys to really be efficient centers. Of course, neither of them can space the floor. They have little to no offensive game, but they have tenacity. They get a lot of boards, and they're good on the defensive end. Both of those guys stepping up. A game the other day that Boston played, Al Horford, of course, gets the start, but he only ends up playing about 15, 16 minutes before Queta, especially, comes in and just dominates off the bench. You don't expect to see that from a guy that really hasn't proven a lot of his keep in the NBA, but Joe Mazzulla, the Boston Celtics, they know these guys can do what they do, and of course, in the starting lineup, you have to touch on it, JB, JT, Drew Holiday, these guys stepping up and doing exactly what they do best, and of course, mentioned in the ladder, Derek White just doing the little things. So yeah, Boston all across. I'm impressed what I'm seeing from the role players. Peyton Pritchard, of course, deserves a nod as well. Just building on what they've been doing. And then after that, we get to a lot of teams that are 500. I mean, currently the Heat are right up there. The Heat, a team that, we've talked about before, and, I'm sure any of you basketball watchers understand what the Heat's deal is. They kind of coast into the playoffs and then see if they can be sneaky when they get there. I mentioned how I don't think that flies in the East as well this year. East more competitive than it's ever been. I think there's a solid 9 or 10 teams that should make the playoffs. Of course, only going to be 8 spots, but the Heat starting out 500, you like what you see. Jimmy Butler, in recent memory, had a pretty bad game against the Knicks, but just having everybody step up. Tyler Hero, looking to come back and have a really strong year. The revamped bench unit that they have, and of course the effect of Bam Adebayo. Heat having a solid start to the season. The Knicks as well. I think we all know the Knicks are going to compete as one of the best teams in the East. It's just building that team chemistry now. I mean, I think people forget that this team, even aside from the Karl Anthony Towns acquisition, which of course makes things a lot harder to mesh because it's brand new. Even guys like, of course, Bridges, who is new. OG, who's only been there since the trade deadline. Jalen Brunson, who, is running the show, but he has a brand new array of teammates to work with. They still have some things that they have to mesh on. Starting 3-3, of course, for Knicks fans, you spend all this money. You're one of the best teams in the league on paper. I think that's fine. Just kind of working out the kinks. I think even Tom Thibodeau, a guy who's not known for his premier rotations, even a guy like him, he has to hammer things out, figure out what he's doing there. Knicks have started off well. Outside of that, I mean, the Nets, 4-4. At this point in the season, I wouldn't take that at its full transparency. I would take it with a grain of salt, I guess is what I mean, because Cam Thomas having an incredible year. If the Nets are hanging around 500 by the All-Star break, I think he sneaks his way onto one of those teams. It's very possible, but I just don't expect the production to pick up. Once again, so early in the season, Cam Thomas getting his shot volume that I don't think we've ever seen before, and at this current moment, hitting them super efficiently. His three-point shot has been really great. And when he plays off the dribble, when he hits that little mid-range, I think he's a really creative player. There's no doubting the abilities that Cam Thomas has. I don't think that leads to winning long-term. Eventually, players are going to go through cold streaks. Even the best players in the NBA, they'll have a 1 or 2 week span in late November where they just can't find the bottom of the net. The thing with Brooklyn is when Cam Thomas goes through that stretch, you don't have anyone else to rely on. Dennis Schroeder having an incredible start to the year. I don't think I can talk about Brooklyn without mentioning him. He is making life a lot easier for Cam. And Dennis himself putting up at one point around 21 points per night. This guy playing an efficient point guard role. Again, talk about point guards that like to cut to the basket. I think Dennis Schroeder off the ball is a super underrated player in general. Even in his older years, he's actually making a really good name for himself. Now, people got excited at the start of the year saying, hey, is he a most improved player candidate? No, Dennis Schroeder's been in the league for a long time now. He's not the most improved, even if he ends this year with crazy stats. It's just an opportunity sort of thing. I got to give my respect for Dennis, though. He's made this team a lot more competitive. Then moving down, Bulls, Pacers, they're kind of in a spot where, hey, they haven't started super strong. The Pacers obviously have higher expectations. Halliburton having a tough game against the Knicks stands out in recent memory, but not worried about that Pacers team figuring it out. Of course, 7th seed if the season ends today. You expect them to be in that 4 through 7 range. The Bulls starting all right, kind of letting the young guys fly. I think they have sneaky growth on that team. I don't see them being a playoff contender. Pistons, Wizards, Hawks, none of those teams are going to be incredibly competitive. Of course, Pistons, Wizards, kind of going to finish towards the bottom, you would think. The Hawks, who knows? Kind of in a weird spot. My boy Zachary Richichet not really doing a whole lot this year. Magic started the season really well. Paolo puts up a 50 burger. Now he's hurt. That's going to be a shame. See how long he's out before I can really make a call on the Magic. And then hanging out at the bottom here, these are the two big dogs that I left this to the end because there's a lot to talk about here. The 76ers and Milwaukee. Wow. Neither of these teams have seemed like they can figure it out this year. Starting with the 76ers, Joel Embiid's absence. And, this gives me a little bit of free content to talk about. But, it doesn't help when you pick up a 3-game suspension. Now, I'm not in the know. I'm not in these NBA reporting circles. I just see what I see. And if I'm the NBA, I see why you feel like you may need to suspend a player for this. Of course, an off-court act of violence of any kind is never going to shine very well on your organization, but I think that I, as well as a lot of people that know the details of the situation, considering what the writer had written about Joel Embiid and people close to him in the past, feel like you might do the same thing in that situation. So Joel Embiid, you can call it a W if you want. Of course, not good to pick up a 3-game suspension when you're already not playing for your team because you have an injury history. A couple of the fellas saying that, hey, if they want to punish Joel Embiid, they should make him play 3 straight games. So, a little humor in that one there. But, at the end of the day, the 76ers are bad. And even last year, I think we saw an era of the 76ers where they played really good even without Joel Embiid, but that's because Maxey was going crazy. And here's my thing with it. If you have a player like Joel Embiid that is just so good when he is playing, you can afford to give rest. You can afford to make sure he's fully healthy to go. You don't want to risk it. I mean, it's not my first day watching basketball. I get it. But when you bring in a secondary, a tertiary star like Paul George to pair up with Tyrese Maxey, and he's also not a guarantee for playing time, which he's proven not to be throughout most of his recent history. Really, ever since his big injury in Indiana, you're not sure when he's going to be on the court for you. That's when the problem arises, because last year, when Embiid wasn't on the court for the Sixers, of course they were not as good of a team, but it allowed Tyrese Maxey to be that guy, to have the ball in his hands, to feel like that he can be the one that's taking these big shots down the stretch. But now with Paul George there, who's also playing on and off, how are you going to know what to do down the stretch? How is a guy like Tyrese Maxey going to operate in this? Because on any given night, if you get into a close game, the final shot could be going to Joel, it could be going to PG, it could be going to you. It changes the scape of your team. It changes how you run your offense on any given night. And if you can get all three of those guys on the court, you bank on the fact that they should be really good, but I'm worried that you're never going to know. It's kind of like Phoenix, how they were last year with Beal, KD, Booker. Those guys, when they shared the court together, the three of them were really good. You just saw it so little that by the point in the end of the year last year, going into the playoffs, when all three of them actually were on the court, they had barely figured out what they do well together. Bradley Beal having a horrible stretch. KD not even really playing his best. It really just turned into, hey, we're paying three guys max money, top 10 contracts, and we're going to have them sit in the corner while Devin Booker does his thing. Is that what the 76ers are going to do? Only so many mouths to feed. And yes, once again, they've started off really bad. I think this team can and should be really good, but I worry more and more as the season progresses that if these guys aren't going to share the court together for long enough throughout the season, I can't, after watching recent history of the NBA, I cannot be confident that when it gets playoff time, they're actually going to show up, because even if they are all healthy, who knows how they actually work on the court? They're not even going to know. That's my take on the 76ers. The Bucks, I could get more fired up about. It's just a bad team. I mean, I'll start off with this. Middleton going to be hurt, out for an extended period of time at the point of recording. Really don't know how long that is. Got officially ruled out for a while yesterday, so hopefully Middleton gets better. Hasn't done too much to start the season, but he's a guy that starts the regular season slow sometimes, even when he is playing really good. My thing with Milwaukee, talk about the coaching all you want. Of course, I don't think Doc Rivers is a great coach. I'm a big NBA coaching snob. Whether your team is good or not, I have strong opinions about your coach. Shout out Mike Brown, shout out Quinn Snyder. I love those two. But it's not even just the coaching. Doc Rivers, Darvin Ham, it's funny. They're playing damn Tetris on the iPads on the sideline, whatever you want to call it. When do we get to talk about Damian Lillard? When do we get to mention that he is the problem on this team? And I know how good of a player he is at his ceiling. I understand who Damian Lillard is. I understand what he did for Portland. He is not Portland Damian Lillard, and he gets the pass like he is so many times. Last year, when him and Giannis couldn't figure it out on the court, I don't know if I'm going crazy or something. I watched the games and it damn well wasn't Giannis's problem. Giannis doing exactly what he does best. His front court pairing with Brook Lopez. I'm not the biggest Brook lover ever, but they worked well together. There was no doubt. It is the backcourt that is causing problems. When you look at that Milwaukee team that goes out and wins a championship, they allow Giannis to play his free-flowing style of offense. They run plays. They run sets for a guy like Chris Middleton to step into open shots. That's beautiful. You take that away with current Damian Lillard because he does not know how to work in a successful offense. Damian Lillard has not been a facilitator since LaMarcus Aldridge was on the Portland Trailblazers. Ever since then, he has been I don't want to call it lucky because he is incredibly talented, but he was a more efficient than he should have been player for Portland. At the end of the day, most of the time he was a shot chucker, and in the games where Portland actually shined as a team, that's because CJ McCollum was putting up equally as impressive games in the backcourt. Damian Lillard has never proven that that he can work in the full scope of a team. I haven't even talked about his defense, which is not good. But if Damian Lillard is not getting 15 shot attempts per night, he is not the most useful point guard in the NBA. And lately, when he is getting up 15 shot attempts per night, he's making 4 or 5 of them. Damian Lillard has not done anything in Milwaukee to show me that this team can actually compete. And when you ask anyone why that team is bad, they will never just say Damian Lillard. So, only 7 games in the season. Do I think the Bucks can still compete? Yes. Do I think Damian Lillard is actually a bad basketball player? Not at all. But if you ask me why Milwaukee is not succeeding, you can talk injuries, you can talk coaching. The first thing I'm pointing to is that Damian Lillard isn't pulling his weight. I want to see it. And, not just in points per game. I want to see the assists go up. I want to see some defensive intensity. I want to see him be more efficient. I just expect more from Dame. Spent a lot of time in the East there, kicking out to the West. Thunder, really good, undefeated. Suns, starting the season really well. Again, they've been healthy. Seems like that 3-man weave that they got going on can actually work. I'd like to see it. And then Golden State. Golden State 6-1 right now. Mentioned it. Buddy Hield, having an incredible start to the season. Even Draymond. I think Draymond's done a lot of things I like so far. Wiggs, he's playing well. Podziemski, they're bringing Kuminga off the bench. And then, of course, the big dog, Buddy Hield, allowing him to get a lot of shots up. Now, it's kind of, you can call it, shout out to the Bay Area, you can call it a little bit of a money ball thing where, hey, you're not going to replace Klay Thompson's shooting ability. You're not going to replace his points per game outburst in one player. But you could call it addition by subtraction in a certain extent, because do I think Buddy Hield right now is a better player than Klay was last year? Not really. I think the biggest compliment would be to say that they're similar, but I think it just allows more of that offense. I think they do things well, and when Steve Kerr looks for talent to bring to his team, he doesn't really like playing a whole lot of young guys. Podziemski, I think, gets less credit than he deserves for being a guy that Steve Kerr actually trusted to roll out there, because wow, he didn't care about playing Wiseman even though he invested a high pick on him, and he doesn't care about starting Kuminga even though that he's supposed to be a big part of their future or at least trade bait. He doesn't care. He wants to play the guys that he thinks can convert best on the court, the guys that understand his scheme, and I think Buddy Hield has been a big perpetuate of that so far. Just putting up good shots. Buddy Hield putting up good shots. I haven't seen that happen. Buddy Hield loves shooting bad shots because he has a torch on him. He's taking good ones at Golden State. Of course, they're falling. I think they are converting really well on all cylinders. Bringing in a guy like Terry Stotts into the coaching room, that's funny. I know talking about Milwaukee, I just got fired up about them. He didn't really work out over there. So, seems like they have a lot of things going well. Then moving down the list, Rockets, Mavericks, Lakers, all of them starting the season pretty well. They have similar level of expectations. Of course, the Mavericks a little bit more. You make the NBA Finals last year, but at the start of the season, you have a new lineup you're running out there. You have Najee Marshall getting big minutes. Klay Thompson, of course, who I just mentioned for Golden State, moves over to Dallas. He's playing a bigger role over there. Those teams all starting well. Timberwolves, Nuggets, 2 other very highly competitive teams out west. Their stars playing well. I think Ants had a really good start to the season. Jokic, of course, is as well. You expect them to keep building on that. Kings, Grizzlies, Clippers. Clippers had a good start to the season, kind of coming back down to earth a little bit, but we're seeing the let him cook hardened Clippers come alive. That's, call it what you want. I don't love it. And then at the bottom, the Utah Jazz. As of the other day, Utah starts the season 0-6. Now they're 1-6. They pick up their first win. Do we see Lauri Markkanen get traded? Do we see Colin Sexton get traded? Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks in a week span. 2 of the players I was actually excited to see on this Jazz team go out for an extended amount of time. That's a shame. And for the Jazz, I actually want to give them a little bit of credit. I think their rebuild is going in the right direction. I like what they've been doing. Hey, you barely play Taylor Hendricks at all last year. He doesn't really have a role for you. By next season, you trust him so much for what he's done in practice, what he's even done in stints in the G League, that you trust him to start for you. And hey, before he got hurt, I thought he looked pretty good. I like what the Jazz have going on over there, trying to kind of pull themselves out of this hole that they set up by, being so bad ever since the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert era. I like what they got going on. At this point, though, does Lauri Markkanen fit your timeline, or is it better to really just commit to, hey, we're going to be even worse for 2 more seasons and we're going to get a haul back for Lauri Markkanen? It's up to you. I mean, if Lauri is happy staying in Utah, I don't think you necessarily have to trade him. When I look at who the Jazz might be having to ship off, assuming they're still really bad by the deadline, I'm not pointing at Lauri. I'm pointing at Sexton. I'm pointing at Jordan Clarkson. Guys who, of course, in the last couple seasons, Jordan Clarkson a little bit longer, have been kind of staples for the Jazz. Guys that can be spark plugs off the bench, can start and be efficient when needed. But hey, those guys are far from fitting your timeline. And at 1-6, don't expect them to be super competitive at any point this season. They're not making your team better. I expect to see those guys go at some point. So Utah, not in the best of spots, you could say. But yeah, out east, out west, super early, watching how things shake up. But yeah, strange start to the season all around for a lot of these teams. All right, guys, outside of that, I mean, kind of been a slower start to the season. Hey, very, very early. You know, I got to come out here for episode 2. Not really having a whole lot of season under the belt, but hey, I'm a big rookie guy. We've seen Zach Edey step up. We've seen Bub Carrington step up. Ryan Dunn looking really good in Phoenix, even though I've hated on him plenty. So hoping on the best, though, for him. I mean, not a personal fan of Phoenix, but if Ryan Dunn succeeds and if Ryan Dunn can shoot the 3 like he shot the 3 so far, can't be mad at it. You got to have respect for the guy. Also, shout out to Jalen Wells, top 3 in this NBA rookie ladder all of a sudden. Did not think he was going to play this year, so him not only playing, but playing well, very encouraging. So outside of that, we talked about the MVP ladder. We went into a little rant about how a lot of the teams have started the season, and really just kind of getting our feet wet, understanding what we're watching for these teams this early in the season. A lot of teams changing their play style, a lot of teams doubling down on what they do best. I mean, the Celtics last year being one of the highest efficient and most common three-point shooting teams to ever compete in the NBA Finals. I believe they might have been number 1 in both of those categories. Opening night against New York, they go out and shoot even more than they ever have, shoot more efficiently until about the 4th quarter than they ever have. Seeing how a guy like Joe Mazzulla at head coach makes that team so special is great. Even in Washington, shout out the Wizards, shout out the boy Vogel. Brian Keefe, wow, he is shaping the narrative of this team. We're seeing Jordan Poole lead the league in steals, being an active defender, and seeing these young guys like Koulibaly, Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington, of course, step up and actually have really important roles on this team. Gotta shout out Washington. I like what they're doing over there as well. So, to my point, a lot of teams changing how they played this season. A lot of teams stepping into this new era of basketball. Of course, the improved shooting. Of course, the faster paced, smaller guards doing a whole lot. These versatile bigs and wings. We're still early, so just keep that in mind. Definitely gonna have to keep y'all updated going forward, but yeah, appreciate you guys watching along. Shorter episode than the intro. Hope you guys still enjoyed some of the content we got this week. I'm going to put a new description in the YouTube videos. I'm going to have this one on Spotify, so hopefully, I forgot to welcome the audio listeners at the start. Hopefully, if you're hearing this on Spotify, it sounds great. If it doesn't, try to let me know. New description, I'm going to have the new form for the Ask Colin segment. We don't have it this week. You can blame me. I'm stupid. I don't know how to make a Google form. So if you left a comment in that one and I didn't read it, I apologize. Please check it out. And hopefully, again, for the YouTube watchers / listeners, the editing's a little better. We had the good friends, fan of the channel, fan of his as well, Lucky Punch Sports, at about 9 minutes into that video, noticed that I had a cut that was still in there. I looked incredibly nervous, and the good friend Lucky Punch liked that to how he feels around women. It's a beautiful thing. Funny guy. No, but all seriously, glad you guys are listening. Glad you guys felt like you could check this one out. We're going to keep pushing this farther and farther, try to get the short form content as well, banning, putting up incredible stuff as well. Make sure to check out the streams. Make sure to check out this short form content. ISOBALL. I called the ISO. I'm putting up my shots, and we're going to be back very, very soon because I have a feeling we're getting into the witching hour. I have a feeling we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the season very soon. Appreciate you guys. Make sure to check us out next week. Next Man Up Sports, ISOBALL. Love y'all. Peace out.